What is happening? Welcome to From Half Court for today, Tuesday, April 4th. I am your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff I Afraidy. Jeff, what it do, baby?
What it do, baby? We're just wrapping up. This is post the Natty, LSU, Iowa. Shout out to Angel Reese, by the way. For
Ooh,
anybody criticizing her before we get into this video for taunting, man,
it's a double
that's
standard.
yeah, it's the double standard thing. It's ridiculous. But congratulations, LSU, Angel Reese. It was a good game, man. Caitlin Clark's still a beast. But
Yeah. Oh,
what a game though. Women's NCAA basketball. I mean, I was locked in, especially this tournament. It was
oh,
great.
100%. Makes me way more excited to watch the WNBA going forward. Makes me way more excited just, for the women's basketball scene and what's to come. Because I think, with that tournament, there's this realization and this acknowledgement of how good of basketball they can play. Like, Caitlin Clark made a name not just because, she was this girl from Iowa. She made a name because she can frickin' hoop. So yeah, absolutely congratulations to them. But Jeff, we are not here to talk about the Women's National Championship today. In fact, we are talking about a team that's on the exact opposite spectrum of a championship. We're talking about the Detroit Pistons, who are currently in their final 5 or 4 games left in the season. And Jeff, we are officially in the point of the season where we just make up arguments to have and we just, find things to get angry about. And the thing that has been at the center of the conversation has been Jalen Duren and James Wiseman, specifically who should be getting that starting spot at the 5 position down the stretch. Now, Jeff, I think there's a lot of people getting misconstrued with who's starting right now, meaning who's going to be starting going forward. I think there's this correlation that's clearly what this means. But Jeff, I think as you and I are even talking about before we started recording, I think people are missing a lot of context here. What were your thoughts when you saw all this transpire?
It didn't really make a ton of sense. I mean, we covered this actually last pod. Me, you, and Troy talked about it, and still people, listen, they obviously haven't watched the pod. Go back and watch the pod because we talked about this, and it's the same view I had then. I mean, we discussed it. James Wiseman, you knew why you traded for him. You need to see what you have in James Wiseman. He has a year left under his contract. He didn't get to play barely at all. He's been injured, but also he never really cracked the rotation for the Golden State Warriors. And he even talked about it. He came out with an interview and said it feels like his rookie year again. So for James Wiseman, the time clock is much shorter than Jalen Duren. Like Duren, we know he's a stud. People act like he's getting DNPs every game. The guy's playing 22 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He's still contributing.
We literally, just out of curiosity before we started recording, you and I were just talking about it. And I just went and I was like, okay, well, let's compare and let's see. Because clearly people are saying that Jalen Duren's not getting this opportunity. He's getting deprived of minutes. But then, Jeff, you go and do the breakdown, and you realize James Wiseman's only averaging 4 more minutes a game than Jalen Duren. Now, you can make the argument, and if you want to get over the semantics of where you want those 4 minutes to go, then sure. If that's how you want to spend your day, that's totally fine. But Jeff, the reality is, if you watch how they treat Jalen Duren, if you watch how they treat James Wiseman, they clearly, see a lot in both of the players. Clearly,
As they should.
Yeah, clearly.
As they should.
And with Duren, there's a way longer runway to work with. You talk about with Wiseman, it's important to remember he missed over 2 seasons, not just in the NBA, but in college as well. So,
Right.
He's missed fundamental developmental stages. And Jeff, what exactly are the Pistons playing for right now?
You know what I love too, Sean, about this? When we get to this point in the season and the Pistons are clearly they've won 1 game out of their last 21 games, and people are concerned about the rotation.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Like that is the last thing on my mind. It's about player development, and getting Wiseman as many reps is the most important thing. It is.
Yeah.
Like Duren's still getting reps. I mean, he's given you 11 and 8 over the last 10 games. It's like it's not like it's affecting his play. Still playing well. James Wiseman's playing well. And again, whether it results in a win or not, who cares? You're trying to get Victor anyway. It's about these guys developing, and they still are, Sean.
And
even with Wiseman playing minutes.
And it's crazy because it's like, even with it's almost like people forgot, just because, it's been a while since we've seen Bojan Bogdanovic Alec Burks, and a lot of these solid vets that we have on our bench, but then also not to mention the fact that Cade Cunningham has still been missing time. Literally all the, like, you go on Twitter, people forget that our injury report is a third of our roster every night. Yeah, and yet for some reason, Jeff, it still feels to me like a lot of the conception is that a lot of the things that are happening on the court are things that are the responsibility of the coaching staff, the responsibility. But I think, Jeff, in reality, when people look at teams that are at the bottom of the league, they're not there because of who's coaching who's coaching on the bench. They're there because of who's making the decisions behind the desk, up in the front office, in the suites, watching from down below. That's the person that sets the tone. And when you've had people, clearly, not setting the table for future success, this is the result of that.
Yeah, they have to work hand in hand. Like, Troy can get the recipe, but Dwayne's got to cook a little bit, right? He can get the ingredients, but Dwayne's got to cook, right? You get James Wiseman, Dwayne's got to give him the runway. Like, Troy even came out and said, if I had the number one pick, I would have taken James Wiseman. It was clear, and he's high on James Wiseman, as he should be. He's shown a lot as is, in his time in Detroit. But Dwayne's giving him the runway. Number one, he earned it. Let's not act like he's just getting this privilege. When you got James Wiseman, Jalen Duren was hurt. Wiseman was playing extremely well. That's why he played so many minutes early on, too. Like, it's not like Wiseman's coming out there and putting up duds, and he's still playing 26 minutes a night. He's actually playing pretty well, and Duren's playing well. I think the odd one out, and we've talked about it before, Marvin Bagley, that's another conversation. But if you're talking about Wiseman and Duren, like, I don't understand why this is even a convo, Sean. Like, when you brought this to me, I'm like, Pistons Twitter talking about that's a serious issue. Are we just looking for things to argue about or discuss? Like, is it even worth discussing? It's clear both these guys, you see them a part of your future. You need two bigs. We like both of these bigs. I think you can't have three. If Marvin Bagley doesn't fit in the rotation, that's fine. But if you like these two, or let's throw Bagley in there. You have three, you pick two you like. And so far, you like these two. So I don't get the concern. I really don't.
Yeah, and if we really want to go down a crazy rabbit hole of some of the takes I saw this past week on Pistons Twitter,
no.
I got love for my guy Pistons Thoughts. I really do, and he knows this. But my brother in Christ,
what
he made the take that Stan Van Gundy should have been kept as the coach after being fired as the president of basketball operations. Which, for one, if you think that man had the voice of the locker room after that season, if you were watching what I was watching, I mean, Jeff, we talk about player development, giving guys runway. Stan Van Gundy would take Luke Kennard out of the game if he got a reach-in foul he didn't like. He would never give players runway. Did we not see what happened in New Orleans just a couple years ago once they replaced Willie Green? Replace Stan Van with Willie Green? Like, what am I missing here, Jeff?
Sean, I'll give you a name. Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer Dinwiddie went on a podcast and discussed how bad it was under Stan Van Gundy. So if we talk about how far we've come, like, say what you want about Dwayne. Dwayne's given all the runway possible for these guys. It's obviously not about winning games. It's about player development. And to me, at least, I can only speak for myself. I've been pleased with these certain players. If you bring up Duren, Wiseman, Ivy, you can keep going. Cade, obviously, we didn't get to see, but I'm sure he would have played extremely well. Whether you want to give credit to the coach or not, it's a different topic.
Right.
Duren, the fact that people act like Duren is being affected negatively because of Wiseman, he's still getting reps. Like, that's what's confusing to me. It's not like Wiseman's come in and takes his spot. Duren, DNPs, he's barely playing any minutes. He's getting 20 plus a night, and he's playing well with Wiseman. So this conversation doesn't make a ton of sense. In moving forward, this rotation is clearly going to be way different. You got free agency, you got the draft. Like, people who even think this rotation now with these players are going to be relatively even the same is crazy to me. It's clearly this last stretch of the season is just watching players. I mean, who cares what happens? As long as these guys are playing well, and Wiseman and Duren, Sean, are playing fine. So
right.
I got no complaints personally, but again, Pistons Twitter, they may feel different.
Well, and I think, part of the frustrations too, people look at, like the multiple big men lineup and all the bigs that Troy Weaver's brought in his time in Detroit. And, even like the other comparison that people are making, oh, well, what about Greg Monroe, Josh Smith, Andre Drummond? But, Jeff, there's this really out of date ideology that's been really getting exposed on Pistons Twitter, where people think for some reason that this league is not dominated by bigs when the top 3 MVP candidates are bigs, when it could be potentially won for a third year in a row by a big. If not, it's going to be won by another big. And then we talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, which is an entire lineup of bigs who can stretch the floor and shoot threes. We talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who one of the guys can stretch the floor, the other's a really dominant paint interior presence. Like, Jeff, we just saw the Minnesota Timberwolves spend 6 first-round picks on Rudy Gobert, not because they just wanted to, because a big is valuable.
Yeah, and again, people act like right now in the Pistons you have 2 Rudy Goberts. Like the 3 bigs you just named, let's just go off the 2 best bigs in the league to me. It's Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. What do those guys do that other traditional bigs cannot do? They can shoot, they can pass, they can handle.
Jokic way better than Embiid, but yeah.
Yes, of course. Passing obviously goes to Jokic, but the point I'm making is those guys are very versatile. Like you look at Wiseman, don't tell me he hasn't shown flashes to be able to play the 4 and switch between the 4 and the 5. He has a skill set. Let's not act like these 2 guys, it's 2 Goberts playing the 4 and the 5. Like they can play together. Now, there's still development, and when Wiseman got here, you brought this up on the podcast, Duren has more career minutes than Wiseman when he got here. So the fact that like Wiseman still has a lot of catching up to do with a short time on his contract left. So there's a lot to, make up for with Wiseman. So I've had no problem seeing Wiseman play. I think it's important for his development. And if you think this 2 big lineup can work, or those 2 just playing together, he needs these reps.
Yeah.
Duren will be fine. I mean, we see him shooting the 3 in practice. Like he's working on his shot in the background. Wiseman's got to get live reps. The time clock for him is a lot shorter.
Right. And now I know a lot of people are watching this video and probably, 11, 12 minutes in are probably screaming at their TV, but why not take the minutes away from Marvin Bagley? Just let those guys play. Make Bagley the odd one out. But Jeff, the reality of it is, not only are you trying to see what you have in James Wiseman, you're also trying to see what you have in Marvin Bagley. And not only are you trying to see what you got, like what you have in these guys as players, you're trying to see what you have in these guys as potential chips for trades this upcoming summer. Because the reality is, if all we see out of Marvin Bagley is that he had hand issues and he doesn't really get many minutes down the stretch, where's the value for a team like, say, the Brooklyn Nets, who, by the way, players like Cam Johnson, you're only going to be able to get through sign and trades. So you have to have pieces that are appealing in order to do that. Am I right?
You hit it. I'm glad you brought that up because people assume, and that's why I said earlier, this rotation this semblance of players will be the same or relatively the same. You're not just playing guys for player development for the Pistons. You're playing them to pitch them to other teams. That's why the Corey Joseph thing, people bring up Corey Joseph. I'm like, me and Kool-Aid talked about this too on a World War Pistons podcast. It might not just be to play Corey Joseph. You might be playing these guys to sell them to other teams. Like that would be the logical thing to do. And Marvin Bagley is a great example of that. Like teams, if they see Marvin Bagley playing well, getting minutes, even for a team that completely stinks and might get the number 1 overall pick, it's still trade value. Like if Marvin Bagley is getting DNPs, missing games, to your point, who's calling him for an $11 million average a year?
Right.
Like, so those things are important, to your point.
Right. And even, and I'm not saying that he's going to be this blue chip trading prospect where we're going to get a lot in return. But the reality of it is, if people can at least see encouraging tape and film that shows progress and shows that, hey, this guy can actually put some things together, it makes him inherently way more of a desirable prospect. But I mean, as well, Troy Weaver continuing, having a lot of these players like RJ Hampton that are coming in, guys that are able to, come in and essentially play for jobs in the future. Like those are also like things to be able to like set up players and to do well by players and build good relationships with agents. Like these are just strategic things that he's doing. And I think one more thing to throw all into this, I think again, just people are forgetting what time of year it is. And this will really, I think, highlight that. In 2 months from now, this entire conversation could be entirely mute because, Jeff, the Pistons could get the number 1 overall pick. And unlike what people are trying to tell me, Victor Wembanyama's a big. He's 7'5" with shoes on. That changes quite literally everything about this conversation. So why are we even having it?
Yeah, well, that's the time of the year we're in. April 3rd, and we're discussing why does Duren get less minutes than Wiseman? Or why isn't he starting over Wiseman? Like that even affects Duren.
I think Dwayne Casey should lose his job because Jalen Duren is playing 4 less minutes a game than James Wiseman. Like,
there's nothing else to talk about, I guess. Has to be.
Like, bloody
you can't talk about the result.
Man. What are your thoughts on the James Wiseman, Jalen Duren debate? Have you been encouraged by what you've seen from both players? How excited are you to see Jalen Duren unleashed in season 2 and beyond? Let us know in the comment section down below. But also, be sure you slap that notification bell. Go check out my interview I had with Ryan Terrell from the Motor City Cruise. That's on the channel as well. And with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.